Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here. Glad you could join me. Very special episode today. One of the first, I hope to be in a long series this season, from the field. And we'll be talking with a good friend of mine, Trevor Walz from landtrust.com. Trevor's also a pro bird hunting guide, and on his day off, he took me hunting. Well, actually, it ended up being more than a day, but, well, you'll get the gist of it when we talk. We'll talk about everything from breaking up dog fights to how to find prairie birds. We're out there in eastern Montana for this session, and everything in between, from what he carries in his vest to how he finds great habitat. So stick around for all of that and more. It'll all be coming up on the Upland Nation podcast. Made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Pro Plan Sport from Purina, and LandTrust.com. Weathered out? You ever been there? Well, so have we. I'm in the trailer with Trevor Waltz of landtrust.com, and we're going to be talking instead of hunting today about a pretty wicked weather here in, what would I call this, northeast Montana, Trevor?
Yeah, I think that's a good...
Yeah, safe enough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, my geography sucks, but that's a safe assumption.
We're somewhere out there. Somewhere
out there, and... I had a great day yesterday, and we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a lot of other things. Land Trust is, something we'll start with. But before we start with that, let's start with your background a little bit when it comes to Land Trust, and then why you're out here and we were able to connect so, in a lot of ways, so easily.
Yeah, definitely. I guess to try and make a long story short, way back when I grew up in the car business, was a fourth generation part of a GM dealership, and that's what I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think fortunately now, maybe unfortunately at the time for our family planning, but my brother and I got a taste for the West when we were really young. And I thank my folks for that. And, it led me to make a decision when I was young to choose a life path versus a career. And it all played out. I then moved to Steamboat Springs, spent a little over a decade there working for a little brand called Smartwool, doing a varied amount of things, but ultimately led me to a sales career. Then moved to Bozeman, Montana with my wife, and so we could both pursue our careers and our lives together. I worked for Simms Fishing Products for about 6.5 years, and then had an unbelievable opportunity to start working with Land Trust, which at the start was me helping them build their sales and business development team, and year and a half or so into that, and now I'm leading the operations for that business. But yeah, it's been a wild but very, very fun ride.
Yeah, I can relate. In fact, Steamboat has a special place in my heart. I don't think I've admitted this to you yet. When I was in the rodeo business, we were there once for the Cowboy Downhill.
Sure.
You remember that event?
Oh, I remember it very well.
It was probably the best skiing I ever done. I should have quit after that race, but we had a great time. And then, of course, the Grand National Stock Show in Denver is why we were there. Yep. And hey, if you ever get a chance, that's a party.
And then some.
Yeah, and you're right. Take your vitamins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're here at Land Trust, and we're here at Land Trust. We're on one of the properties that you guys, I don't know what to call it. Describe how Land Trust works.
Sure.
And what the relative advantages are for people like me, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. At the core, Land Trust is a marketplace. So. Yeah. Your best comparison or one people know is Airbnb. So we have basically two businesses. We have supply, which for us is predominantly multi-generation farm and ranch families. They're producers that have this great asset, and they partner with us to list their land They do that, like I said, through a partnership. We have no contracts. The landowners remain in full control all the time. They can decide what they want to list, when they want to list it, how much it should cost. We'll certainly guide them through that process, help them build a listing. And then we take over as marketers to market that product out to guests, people like you and I. Lots of our guests are sportsmen. They're looking for places to hunt and to fish, to camp, etc. And most of these folks, they want to go do this experience on their own, a do-it-yourself hunter, if we will. And so here we are. We're on this unbelievable ranch up in northeastern Montana. We talked to the third generation, which is the father of the now fourth generation. So they're all very present on the property. They've got a ton of wheat. I mean, we can still see it all standing out there, blowing in the wind right now.
Blowing in the wind, yeah.
Got a few hundred head of cattle. But yeah, it's an incredible, to me, asset, and ultimately creates access to private land for people to go do or go have great experiences.
There's two ways to describe it, and I like this way. There are a couple generations of us who never learned how to drive the back roads and knock on doors at ranches and farms, because first off, we don't live nearby.
Sure.
Second off, we don't know how to do that, and third off, a lot of times those people are unreachable that way. They have day jobs in town or whatever.
Or they're busy people.
Yeah.
Or then there's the whole, they don't want you coming to their door.
Yeah. So this is kind of 21st century door knocking.
Absolutely.
Is what it is to me.
Yep, with a whole lot of other things in the toolbox.
Yeah.
E-scouting.
Yep.
I mean, the beauty of creating a free account with Land Trust is if you answer the few questions that we ask you in that process, we learn some things about you, and then we use that to provide information that you've pretty much already told us that you'd like us to deliver to your inbox.
Let me just endorse that to the next degree, and that is, quite often, and my experiences are not as great as yours. You're part of the company, but the landowners are very communicative. They really do want you to succeed, and I understand that. Largely, they're now in the hospitality business.
Yeah,
they want you to have a good time.
Absolutely.
So we're getting pins for places that birds were spotted. We're getting suggestions on where to park the trailers. A lot of these places have some sort of lodging option available.
And they're checking in with us to ask, are we having a good time? Because that really is important to them.
Yeah.
And that goes even to the point of, we get asked questions on, how do we manage the species populations, and how do we ensure we're not overhunting properties? Well, the landowners do that for us because they care. They care about their land, their properties. They care about the species and the animals that live there. And that helps. I mean, the landowners are focused on the experience all the time. And that even comes to the point of, how do we help ensure that we're not overhunting a property? Well, they help us do that. They dictate what's happening from how many species are there, how many hunters have been around. It's not beneficial for the landowner to kill off everything that's there, nor do they want to do that. So, they're helping us, by saying, hey, we've had this amount of hunters already this year. We're going to let the property rest for a few weeks, few months, or, we're going to be done hunting birds this year. Yeah. Well,
I've been impressed, and the variety of habitat, if nothing else. We together have hunted solely prairie birds on our two connections.
Yep.
But there's a variety of other opportunities, whether it's Montana or anywhere else.
Yeah, we have listings in 42 states now.
Wow.
We're approaching 2 million acres listed. The Southeast has been a really big focus for us the last, I would say, the better part of this year. We know there's a lot of opportunities. That's what sportsmen are telling us, and the more landowners we meet, the more interested they are in hearing about what we offer, how we can help them.
So just to wrap up the industry inside talk, what other things, whether it's different bird species or other animals or fishing, what are the other opportunities available through landtrust.com?
I mean, pretty much everything that you can get a hunting license for, we've got available in the U.S. So big game is a big focus for us, especially this time of the year.
Sure.
Upland birds is a growing area of focus focus from our guests. Turkeys is still the number one book species.
Wow.
And then fishing is growing, every year. Camping, usually people want to tow their campers when they go hunting or fishing because they don't want to leave the property. That they want to extend that experience. So a lot of our listings offer, camping, and it might not be the KOA experience where you've got full hookups and all of that. But for a lot of us, we don't need that. In fact, we'd rather leave that in town. Yeah,
there is a mentality there, and it's funny. Well, we're roughing it.
Yeah.
In a fully self-contained camper.
Right. Yeah, we're really roughing it right now, Scott.
but it could be worse, and we've both been there.
Yeah.
And you're going back to that, and we're going to talk about that too. But let's start with our trip yesterday. We have a lot of parcels that we can visit here. We don't have to just hunt what we're seeing out the window right now, and we had a good time. And just for the record, I shot a Scotch double and then a single on the same flush on the Sharptail grouse side. But then I came back to nurse my bad foot and do some work, and you went out.
You did the smart thing, so we could have another great day.
Yeah, but you had an experience once we parted ways.
Sure.
I think was just golden, and I want you to share it with us.
Yeah, I mean, the best part about this for me is the dogs, and I've kind of gotten in a habit. I've added at least one, if not two, every year for the last number, and so I got a pup last July. So she was a year at the end of this July, and she's developing great. Hadn't had that first what we'd call that light bulb moment yet, and we had it last night. It's kind of a long day on the foot or on the feet, and but I wanted to get her out, and so we ran a couple dogs last night. I ran her with one of the older, kind of more confident, and we found a covey of huns, and sure enough, she had her first point, and birds got up. It was a really tough shot. I missed the bird, but like I said, it was a great moment, and from the rest of the 30 minutes we were out there, that dog was hunting, and it's just, I can't have a bad time when all that comes together.
It was so obvious that you saw a changed dog after that find.
Yep.
Describe how she had changed.
She went from being a puppy out, just wanting to run around at mock speed, following some other dogs a little bit. Still, you can tell that she's trying to figure it out, but doesn't quite know what that means yet. And then from the point after her point, her nose was on the ground. She was running her own casts, really paying no attention to the other dog, starting to cover through ground that she had just found that covey of huns. Just a changed dog. And I need to keep doing that. I'm certainly not now in the place of, she's ready to go. She's a finished pointer. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We need to keep doing that, keep setting her up for success, but we're on the right path.
Yeah, and you were lucky enough to get that relatively early in her career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty of living in wild bird country. I've got the luxury of running dogs on wild birds 300 plus days a year, and that's the best part of every day.
Yeah. Well, what about those of us who can't run dogs on wild birds as often as you do? I got a pigeon coop, and they're better than nothing.
Sure. And
there are ways with enough machinery and dollar bills that you can simulate wild bird contact to a degree.
Sure.
What else would you suggest for people like us who are somewhat restricted?
Well, yeah, I think a big part of it is you have to be realistic with yourself.
Yeah.
And set expectations that you can consistently follow. For me, I can get dogs on wild birds every day that I want to go out or I can get out. If I couldn't, pigeons are a great thing, a great tool. Ideally, you find ones that can fly. We've all had those experiences.
Yeah.
But I think there's still that also sets up expectations. I mean, just because you're training on pigeons doesn't mean that your dog is building the same skill set as if it were on wild birds. Now you're helping and you're setting it up for better opportunities in the field. But I think, again, it's just expectations need to be, we're training here on this focus, and I think a dog should be in a better place to take it to the next level or to keep learning once it gets into the field. Mm-hmm. But I see too often people, they've spent however much money or they've trained on pigeons and they get their dog out basically here. And the dog's not finding birds, or it's running past them, or whatever it might be, and the dog's still figuring it out.
One of the things that a lot of people never quite buy into that and it's hard because, like you said, we train hard or we don't. We buy a finished dog or a started dog, and we want to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. When often that's exactly the wrong thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, patience is I think one of the most important things as a sportsman, as a owner of dogs, as an owner of working dogs. I mean, there's many times where instinctually birds flush and you want to pull the trigger. If you care about a steady dog and a dog that can continue to develop, sometimes the best thing is not pulling the trigger.
So how do we cope with that? Let's just take that and drill down just a moment, because here I am. If I'm all alone, mm-hmm. if I'm hunting with my dog and nobody else, that's easy because I got no witnesses. There's no expectation I bring home a big bag of birds.
Sure.
That's easy. But if we're hunting with somebody else, my first thought is, okay, first off, have the talk and say, don't shoot if this happens.
Right.
Go ahead and shoot if this happens. But you're going to shoot. I'm not. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to do what?
What do you mean by that?
I'm the dog owner, I'm the dog handler.
Sure.
I have a partner hunting with me.
Yep.
Dog hopefully finds a bird. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do as the dog owner to manage that dog so it goes to the next step while I got a hunting partner with me?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, expectations set before you're leaving the truck on how things are going to proceed out there. And I mean, my focus, if it's my dog, I'm focused on ensuring that dog does everything that I want it to do. And then pulling the trigger, ideally shooting the bird, that's the reward for doing those things. So, if the goal is for, with Jack, who was out last night for first point, I'm wanting that dog to get in the scent cone, have the find, steady, and then I'm flushing the birds and then taking the shot.
Yeah.
If she's moving on that point, I'm not taking that shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's especially in that first moment, all she's learning is, oh, these are all the things that I did, and I got a reward for it.
Yeah.
But if it all goes as planned, the way that you want it to, and then she gets the reward, you're not trying to train around something that, wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, you don't have to fix a problem that you basically created yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And that was my point earlier on, sometimes the best thing is not pulling the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in those early developing moments, and even later, in as the dog grows and becomes more experienced, you know, when you reward the dog, you have to remember what you're, you know, rewarding for.
Yeah.
And so it's, if, like I said, if she moved last night, I wouldn't have pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Because that's rewarding her for something that, you know, we ultimately don't want.
You know, it's very hard because we don't think like dogs. Dogs think so literally.
Mm-hmm.
That they always, when they put 2 and 2 together, it's always 4.
Sure.
When we want it to be 5 or 3. And we need to kind of put ourselves in our dog's paws.
Yep.
It's hard, especially if you've gone birdless all day.
Absolutely.
Speaking of birdless all day, so we arrived, set up camp, and then had what I described to my wife as the most vicious thunderstorm I've experienced in a couple decades.
I think it might have been an inland hurricane.
Well, whatever it was rough.
Yeah.
I mean, we battened down the hatches, we survived, and then all of that. But that had to have an effect on birds. You know, these birds are out there. I don't care how civilized they are. They're still coping with all of that stuff.
Sure.
The next day, the aftermath has got to be different than on a pleasant evening where the crickets are singing
Yep.
and the moon is smiling down from up there. What? Because and then I'm going to bring up a few things. We had 3 or 4 what I'll term unproductive finds, like the field trial were. Dogs, we were convinced there were birds right in front of that dog's nose.
Yep.
But when we got there, there weren't.
Yeah, no birds, but there was sign of birds being there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see that a lot, especially when these big weather patterns come through. You know, September in Montana, the weather is all over the place. We had 95 degrees a few days ago. It's probably 55 degrees today. The wind's blowing hard. Like you said, you know, huge storm front that came through. Birds like fish, and lots of animals get unpredictable when their surroundings change, especially when they change quickly in multiple times in a short period of time. So, you know, I wasn't really surprised to see what I would call jumpy birds and them being spread out a little bit more than I would have expected that time of the morning, or at least expected on a consistent weather pattern. And I think, you know, what you see is the dogs they're trying to figure it out as well. I don't really believe the scenting was fantastic, but, you know, at the same time, it's a 2 and a 3-year-old dog that have seen and found a lot of wild birds. But I tend to believe that, you know, at about 3, you really start understanding what you've got in a dog. 5, maybe even late 4s, you know, that dog kind of grabs another gear, especially if it's living on the prairies or living on wild birds. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of really great wild bird dogs. There's some at our camp, and, you know, like I said, from 3 to 5, it is an entirely different dog. And so I bring that up because I'm very confident in some dogs that I don't own that a close friend of mine does, that, you know, they're finding birds no matter the conditions. And my dogs just aren't quite there yet, but that's why we walk.
You keep alluding to it, and I'm a big believer that. I asked yesterday. I said, you know, is it bird contacts? Is it this? Especially with your young dog Jack, is it the birds? Is it being around other experienced dogs, or is it simply putting in the miles, which helps with all of that?
Sure.
You can't learn how to do well in the music business. You spent a lot of time in the practice room, but ultimately you had to go out on the stage. Everybody's a virtuoso in the practice room.
Absolutely.
but you got to go out on the stage. And if you go out on the stage frequently enough, you just become better.
Right.
There's no better test. It's just like a dog. You put them on the prairie or in the grouse woods, doesn't matter. Put them in the place where they're expected to perform as a professional. That I think is kind of the corollary to what you described, is the age.
Yep. But
only age if they're out there on stage.
Yeah, and it's I mean, even more than age is experience.
Yeah.
And you know, those of us that spend a lot of time around dogs, I mean, we see that even I have a dog that at 8 months, she was fully ready to be guided over. She was matured, she was doing everything right. And I've had dogs that aren't ready until 2.
Yeah.
And, that's also the beauty of it. They're not machines. They're not all the same. And then they all have, their own ways of processing things, of learning. But at the end of the day, what you can give them is consistent experiences, positive experiences. And then you got to let them figure it out. We can only do so much setting up success, only so much kind of coaching. But at the end of the day, the more opportunities you give them, they'll figure it out.
Well, that's the joy of having a string of 8 dogs. You've always got somebody at the right level, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it does help. And but my wife will listen to this at some point, and she loves the dogs. She also doesn't necessarily believe me every time I say, okay, I'm good for a while. I won't buy any dogs this year. I mean, I think I've said that the last however many years, and I've bought at least one dog, and but I love them. Well,
there are worse addictions.
I definitely agree with that.
Not to say we don't have those too, everybody, but we don't. I'm Scott Linden. That's Trevor Walz. He's with landtrust.com, among other things. We're going to talk about those other things a little bit more in the second half of the podcast. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We'll talk more, especially about kind of hunting strategy and guiding protocol and etiquette.
Looking forward to it.
So that'll be coming up right after these brief messages. Whether we're in Montana or anywhere else, the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by PointerShotguns.com. Yeah, maybe you'd like to shoot a little better than you did, say, the most recent trip you made. Now is the time to start shopping for your new shotgun. In any configuration, any gauge, any finish, it's all available at PointerShotguns.com. And for everything else you need, go to MidwayUSA.com, including ammo of all sorts, non-toxic among other things. So if you're looking for ammo for the rest of your season, check it out at MidwayUSA.com. And just a heads up, before you make that big order for more ammo, sign up for their email or text messaging, and you'll get 10% off your next order. And that's pretty darn good. So take a look at all the offers and all the choices at MidwayUSA.com. Did I say take a look? Take a look down the barrel of your gun, but not really. Don't be aiming. I don't either. But I scored big on this trip, and one of the reasons is I'm using HiViz sights. Learn more about the technology and the choices you have in their patented interlocking light pipe systems that will create a great relationship between the muzzle of your shotgun and the target you're shooting at. No aiming required, but that creates that kind of subtle, subconscious knowledge of where that muzzle is. Learn more at HiVizSights.com. And no matter what you're putting on your muzzle or anywhere else, you got to take care of that shotgun. And the way to do it is with SageandBreaker.com. Gun cleaning and care crafted at the highest caliber, lifetime warranty, and some of the best photos on Facebook. Sage and Breaker makes high-quality gun cleaning products and accessories for hunters and shooting enthusiasts. Simple and easy to maintain and protect the life of your shotgun. Learn more at sageandbreaker.com. .com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here, your host, from somewhere in northeast Montana, where it's so windy that we're doing a podcast interview instead. That's Trevor Waltz on the other side. He'll be in your left ear. He's with landtrust.com. But Trevor, also, you're still guiding.
I am.
You're guiding too, and that's luckily one of the reasons we can get connected. Your guide camp is not that far away in Montana terms.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about a day in the life of a pro bird hunting guide, just to dispel all of the romantic notions we have.
Yeah. Well, it starts at least an hour, if not a couple hours before usually the client's day starts. But we got to get ourselves ready. We got to make sure we've got everything we need in the truck. We got to get the dogs out, aired, watered, all those things that take time. And so the mornings usually start dark and early. But quite honestly, I look forward to every single start of a guide day.
Really?
And I look forward to every hunting day too. But it's different for a lot of reasons. And in some ways I enjoy my guide days more than my own days hunting. I think some of that's because I love the experience, and every day is going to be a different one. I love the group that, the other guides, the whole package there. And then ultimately it's a different way of being with the dogs. And, and again, I appreciate all of it, but it's just been a really rewarding learning experience for me. And I think it shows in my dogs. I mean, they're on birds.
Yeah.
Even more often than if we weren't doing that.
True. Also, you're right. You get paid to put your dogs on wild birds,
mm-hmm.
and that's probably almost always really cool.
Yeah.
But you use the term learning, and I want to use the term teaching. I talk to a lot of people, and I don't care where they are in their life or in their career. When it comes to hunting or fishing, at some point, you ask them, "What do you love most about doing this?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't care what they're doing. Plains game in Africa, or wild prairie birds, or small brook trout in the Alleghenies.
Mm-hmm.
I love teaching other people how to do it.
Sure.
Do you get some of that in the guiding world?
Absolutely. For a lot of folks, we're teaching them, or we're helping them have potentially their first experience on wild birds, which also means it's probably their first experience with dogs that run 800 yards, and are making those big casts out over the horizon, and so there's that. There's teaching oftentimes on how to carry your gun the right way, when to load your gun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's
when the safety should be coming off, and that safety shouldn't be coming off until you're on the bird ready to pull the trigger. So there's all that stuff, and then you get things that get thrown at you during the day. Maybe a dog steps on a cactus, and you need to deal with that. There's always opportunities to teach, but at the end of the day, I think for me, the teaching comes down to setting up and hopefully delivering a great experience while walking a lot.
We talked last night, what little I can remember, it was pretty late in the session, about some people need a little bit more guidance than other people
Sure.
out there. Are there any things in particular that you think, hey, 60% of us are going to hire a guide or go to a lodge.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things we can prepare for now, whether it's mentally or physically, that will help us so you don't have to be quite as pushy a teacher?
Yeah. There's to me that they're just you can't leave home without it stuff.
Yeah.
Good boots, and don't buy them at the store the day before you leave for your trip. And don't buy the boots that your buddy told you to buy just because he told you to buy them. footwear is footwear. It's got to fit. So find good boots and break them in, and get spend to that point. Be fit. You'll have a better experience. Hunting wild birds, we're walking 10 to 12 miles a day. And we do that because we need to cover ground to get to the birds, to get to those incredible points. And ultimately, the more fit you are, the better time you're going to have.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with your firearm. And yes, learn how to shoot it, but learn how it works. Learn how the safety comes on and off. The little things that are critical to the safety part of it, but also that help deliver a great experience.
Yeah.
From there, it's show up, be willing to learn, to maybe have your ego checked a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately to trust us. And I hope, especially if you're chasing wild birds, that you want to come out and see some great dog work.
Yeah. It's too bad that you can't just do a blood test for that. Then you could eliminate, that niggling 5% of the clientele that really, really doesn't want that. They want something else.
Sure.
You mentioned something, and I got to echo that. We were making a TV show at some lodge in Kentucky, I think. Yeah, Kentucky. And we had, granted, early release birds, so we knew there were a lot of birds. So to the point of that is we were just having so much fun. We were bringing guests to the lodge on some of the shoots with us.
Sure.
And I remember Marv Schott, I hope you're listening because you're still a great example of this, and I love you for it. Thank you for putting up with us. But we were hunting, and Marv came along, and over the course of the day, especially watching the videos afterwards as we're putting the show together, that guy was the poster boy for what you just described. Get to know your gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's like probably a Marine Corps rifleman. Put the blindfold on, you could take it apart, you could put it back together, you could probably even hit most targets with the blindfold still on.
Sure.
That guy was the example for everybody else, and that most of us never get there. You're like my friend Tom, you're switching from, you're working on switching from vertical barrels to horizontal barrels.
Yeah.
It just to tell everybody, there's hope for everybody. But what is it that you think is challenging about that?
If I'm being completely frank, I don't think my gun fits me that great right now. And I'll get that figured out.
Yeah.
But no, it is I don't think for a lot of people that over under to side by side switch is an overnight thing.
Yeah.
I truly enjoy the learning and the little bit of challenge that comes with it. But that goes back to learning your gun. You brought up a great point. Make sure it fits you. There's a lot of options out there, and I'm kind of I'm dealing with probably rushing into a purchase that I should have taken a little bit more time on, but
Well, we talked about one aspect of a dog's development is literally miles and time in the field.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer in the same thing for humans and shotguns.
Yep.
So, like I said, shoot 400 rounds through that thing, and I'll bet you'll figure it out. But
I agree with you.
Yeah. That's one of those other things that everybody could do before they come out on a guide trip.
Mm-hmm.
Practice.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll be more prepared for that flush once, and if you know your tool.
Yeah. We talked about learning and clients and some of the things that they ought to do to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you guys in the guide tent at night in hushed whispers, because it's only canvas, have to complain about is the other things that those clients did that day. And without naming names, what are some of the biggest faux pas that clients commit when they're on a guide trip?
Sure. I mean, I think, and I'll preface this all with, we have a lot of fantastic clients, and I think a lot of guides would say that. I would hope they do. But there's always stuff that happens, and a lot of it comes down to expectations. It's just like dogs. If it's your first wild bird trip, I would encourage you to be more on the learning side of coming into that trip than the I know it all side. Just ultimately because you're going to have a better time. But it's the things we don't like dealing with are having to tell people how to safely carry a firearm, to load, all the things that come with safety. That is the number one priority, and I would say it's probably the only priority. And I feel pretty safe saying that is the case for all guides. At the end of the day, we're walking around with people that we maybe have never met before, and they have firearms. That's a real thing. Not that there isn't trust, but that's got to be built. And so, yeah, it's different than fishing. And there's just all the things that come with that. So, yeah, we don't like having to deal with or to be, and in fact, for me, there's no constant reminder of that one. You get told one time that your gun needs to be broken or that the safety should not be coming off, and if it happens again, we're going back to the truck. There's just too much opportunity for something bad to happen. But yeah, I mean that doesn't happen that often.
So here we are. We're on the prairies in Montana, and the same would hold true for a lot of prairie states and a lot of prairie birds, which are primarily sharptails. Part of the year they're prairie chickens. Part of the year they're also huns, or if you're really lucky, a sage grouse or something like that.
Yep.
Describe ideal habitat for, let's just say, sharpies and huns.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us what we should look for if we're going out for the first time?
You can definitely find both of those birds in similar areas, or I would say in the same walk. But you're going to look for those two in different places.
Yeah.
Huns are a pretty hardy bird for their size. And to the point of the cover that they may sit down in could be a lot less than you would expect it to be. I mean, I've found them in very rocky, it's still going to have some grasses or, some sort of greenery, if you will, or something growing. But, in general, those birds they're small and they can't fly that far. So they're relying on the wind, especially to get them moving quickly. So, you look for them on sides of hills and kind of bumps and things of that nature, especially if they've already been moved. But also wouldn't be unlikely to find them in a farm area, a yard, ranch yard, farmyard, or close to grain bins, those types of things, in some stubble and, kind of little depressions, so flatter ground. But I would say if, later in the day, you're better off looking in higher ground. Sharptails, similar, where they're going to be kind of in that flatter, not flat, but flatter terrain earlier in the day. Once they've been moved or once they move on their own, then they're looking for, more cover, whether that's from predators, whether that's from heat,
sun,
exactly. So that could be snowberries, juniper bushes, rationale, even deeper or thicker, kind of more timber, trees and things of that nature. But a lot of it just depends on what the weather's throwing at you and kind of what that affects their process or their timing throughout the day on those big moves.
Have you noticed a routine in these birds? I mean, are they feeding at first light and then they're moving to cover of some sort, and then they're coming back out in the afternoon for another feed?
Yep.
You do see
yeah,
that.
all those things for sure. And then there's something to be said for not getting on those birds too early in the morning. I always joke about you don't want to interrupt their breakfast. I mean, I don't like it when people do that to me. But joking aside, it's when they're feeding, they're typically grouped up.
Yeah.
And which, yes, is your opportunity there for a big covey flush? Well, sure, but you also have a whole bunch of eyes looking out for predators, and we are one of those. So, I think better off to let them get through that process. So don't hit them right away at daybreak if you don't have to.
I've watched valley quail, the ones we can see from our kitchen window. Mm-hmm. So that's how I base all my opinions about wild birds.
Sure.
But I'll see them drop. They roost in trees.
Yep.
So I'll see them drop out of the tree at first light. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they hit the ground, they're scratching for food. And I'm thinking, nobody's ever really talked about that. One guy, Rocky Gutierrez, thank you, helped write the book on valley quail.
Okay.
But he's the first one who ever mentioned that. That's the first thing they do. Now, so Sharpies, for example, Huns, the same thing. What do they do after they've all grouped up? They've eaten plenty. Do they just kind of wander apart, or are they looking for something else as a group and they just get scattered? What do you think they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, this time of year, outside of the breeding season, mm-hmm. They're, at least my experience has been, they're trying to stay together, keep that group. But, whether the weather can push them apart, some sort of threat. Is often what pushes them apart, whether that's a bird of prey, whether it's coyote, us,
mm-hmm.
dog, whatever it might be. But yeah, they're ultimately, their goal is to try and stay together, and then if they get pushed apart, come back together at the end of the day. And that's just a power in numbers thing.
I'm always curious about the importance of free water. Mm-hmm. to these prairie birds.
Sure.
And a lot of people say, oh yeah, they need water. So look, hunt around ponds, hunt around, water courses, streams and all that. You ever seen a prairie bird take a drink of water?
I have not.
My theory is they just like the cover that flourishes in those areas. Sure.
And my experience, again, I'm not, people could have different experiences than this. I'd love to hear about it. But when it comes to standing water, ponds, I've found Huns in closer proximity to that type of or to standing water. I don't think that they're going to mm-hmm. that water, mm-hmm. but I think the terrain around kind of works in favor with that pond or whatever it might be. But no, in general, the birds they're getting their water from the ground. Mm-hmm. Whether it's coming off of grasses or bushes of things of that nature. I think we find them in those draws and where the grasses are lusher and greener because there's more presence of water for sure. But ultimately, it's also cooler. So when the temp pops up to 95 degrees, that's a more comfortable place for them to take shelter for the day.
That I'd never heard of, but it's so logical.
Mm-hmm.
What are you finding in their crops?
This time of year, a little bit of, I shouldn't say everything, but it's not
variety.
One consistent food. Exactly. Yep, they're still eating grasshoppers. I think that, weather dependent, but that'll probably taper off pretty quickly here, or pretty soon as we move through the balance of the month. But snowberries, they'll start eating rose hips and things like that. But yeah, it's varied. Still finding some seed.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the field right out here is full of soybeans.
Mm-hmm.
But I think soybeans are not much of a crop in this area. I think that was maybe an experiment or something.
Yeah, I think they said they've got lentils in some area. They certainly have a lot of wheat around.
And speaking of that, everybody talks about hunting sharptails in particular near alfalfa and wheat, and both make sense to me if you can get close to that stuff. Would you confirm that? Would you agree with that?
I would. Yep. Yeah, it's it's a good food source. Depending on the height of that crop, it could be good cover for them as well.
I remember a really, really cold winter day in January. We were actually hunting chukars, but on the way back it was so cold we cut across a cut wheat field. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find the dog, and he couldn't find the dog. And then we look out, and there he is. You can see his nose and his tail, and the rest of him is in kind of a little depression.
Sure.
On this stubble field. And out of that depression comes a good-sized covey of huns. Mm-hmm. And the stubble and the depression together might have been 8 or 10 inches.
Right.
But that was enough to shelter them from that wind.
Exactly.
And you alluded earlier to rocks. Mm-hmm. Same thing. We found huns amongst the little rocks. I call it chukar light country.
Yeah.
They've got enough cover in on bowling ball size rocks.
And they blend right into that.
We walk through a covey. Mm-hmm. Looking for them before they got up all around us, and so you never know with them. They really do kind of vex you once in a while when it comes to the cover they're in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think huns are probably top of the list for me on the varied terrain and locations that I've found them.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, the host. That's Trevor Walz. He's with landtrust.com, pro guide as well, and we're talking about practical stuff. In fact, I want to ask you something. I watch it. I'm trying to pitch in without getting in the way, but you manage 8 dogs, and those are just your dogs. At some point you're probably asked to help somebody else with their dogs at camp as well or something. And I appreciate your help with, we found a little cut on Flick's leg yesterday, and the non-colorblind one of us was able to see it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped.
But what have you learned? I mean, everything that I've learned, you've learned times 8, faster. What are some dog care things that you do that we might learn and save ourselves a little bit of aggravation?
I would pay attention to the little stuff, which doesn't mean get nervous or immediately go to the vet. I think having a great relationship with a vet it's been a huge resource for me. I'm now to the point where I can text him, I can call him. He's a wild bird dog guy too, which is also great.
Oh yeah.
But having that resource and then ultimately knowing how those or what those resources are in the areas you're hunting. Having a vet that you can call if something really goes south. But check eyes, check mouths, check pads, check all that stuff. After each hunt. If you've got seeds in eyes, I immediately go to rinsing them.
Yeah.
I don't try and dig around in there unless it's, I can for sure get it out, and then I use a Q-tip, which I'm sure a lot of people do. But having a good rinse around for eyes, for ears, for rinsing off little cuts and things like that. 4 cuts, unless it's real bad. I'm a believer that dogs are great healers. Cleaning it and giving us antiseptic spray or something right away or right before you put them up after the run, I think does definitely go a long way. It's not going to hurt anything. And then I just keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
If it needs human intervention, then I do it. But most of the time, they're healers.
No doubt about it. And, you only have to live through it a few hundred times before you agree with that.
And that's the thing. It's, the first, when I had 1 or 2 dogs, and I was learning, and I'm still learning, I run into something new every season. But, my tolerance, my patience, my understanding has definitely grown, and so yeah, I totally get it. When somebody's many years ago in my life, I understand why it's a bigger deal, but and that's fine. That's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And it's better to care than to not.
We were having coffee and breakfast this morning, and there were the two short hairs in your string of English pointers were in here with us, and they're litter mates, and they're just precious. And I don't use that word very often. I apologize, but they were they got along like they are.
Oh man, they're
siblings.
They have their quarrels from time to time, but generally speaking, they are two peas in a pod.
So then we go out on the string, and there's 8 dogs, and we have a good chain gang. The dogs are spaced far enough apart to where they can't really get in a lot of trouble with the other dog.
Sure.
But if you're forced to kind of make the configuration a little different, there's a chance they could interact, and sometimes that interaction is kind of not what we want. How do you, first off, prevent dog-on-dog aggression? Mm-hmm. And then, practically speaking, let's say it happens. What are you going to do about it?
Sure. I'm very much for me, I don't own dogs that don't get along. Yeah. Now, just like people, we all have a bad day and something gets under our skin and, we want to snap at somebody or whatever it is. So yeah, that stuff happens, but generally speaking, I can double any of my dogs in a rough tough or in the topper. They all get along. I've been really lucky, and I haven't, or all the dogs I've purchased over the years have been in that camp, so to speak. I would probably find a new home for a dog that didn't fit, and it just it's got to be easy, or as easy as it can be. And I don't have a tolerance for an aggressive dog. And where things get out of our control is with client dogs. Yeah. Because they're either haven't been socialized enough, or some breeds are more temperamental than others. But yeah, we need that understanding early, and that's the owner's responsibility. But I would never put one of my dogs with a client dog in a box. For a lot of reasons. But we need to know if you want to run your dog, can I run one of my dogs with it, or is that going to be a problem? So we're going to ask those questions, and just be honest. If you've brought your dog and we want it to be successful, but if it's not going to get along with others, then we'll put it out by itself. And if there's an interaction, it kind of depends on what that you certainly want to get it broken up, but not at the loss of limbs or I've had a couple of little tussles in the yard at home, and generally they're things that they work themselves out, and I like to let them work themselves out if possible. Really? Usually I've got 8, and there's a pack there. Yeah. You bring a new dog in, and there's going to be some jostling. It's healthy for them to figure that out. Now, you need to keep a close eye on it, because figuring it out is very different than an aggressive dog. Yeah. That wants to cause a problem or be a problem. So I would say, just like wolves and coyotes, they're going to figure it out. It typically works, but you need to watch out for the severe cases.
Well, you use the magic word socialization, and to be able to put 2 dogs in one kennel, mm-hmm. You don't start with that. That's probably the final exam in a socialization class.
I've bought a lot of dogs at the 5 to 6 month. I've bought had a lot of pups, and the 6-month-old dogs I'm usually take I watch a little bit more just to get a better understanding for how they respond to other dogs and kind of let them get through the period of they're the new ones. But with my pups, I mean, I'll put them and now I've got the luxury, I've got a big dog topper, and if I have to, I put them together, but generally they ride in their own box. But I have no hesitation putting a pup in with one of my older dogs in a rough tough.
Yeah.
I know that it's not going to be an issue. I know that, the older dog may put them in their place. And usually what happens is the pup's trying to play.
Yeah.
And the other, they just, kind of roll over on them and say, well, this isn't the place we're going to do that. But no, I think a good mannered and ultimately a well-bred dog, you should be able to start that socialization with the other dogs in a close quarters pretty much right away.
The chain gain helps.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're right there, but they're not right there, and that I think is probably something everybody ought to maybe consider a little bit more. You don't need to have 8 dogs on it, but
sure.
you could put 2 dogs on 2 stakes and start the process that way. Yeah,
and that's something you can do at home.
Yeah.
Another good prep before you go to a outfitting camp. If your dog, I mean, most lodges, client experiences, they're not going to be okay with your dog just free roaming around the camp. So it'd be a unique situation for them to be. Yeah. I mean, prepare your dog for that adventure too. And I think, Chain Gangs makes an incredible product. I've been using it for years, and it's safe. It's easy to transport, and and the dogs are, once they figure it out, they're happy. It becomes their home.
And that's a good chance to take a quick break here at the Upland Nation podcast. Trevor Walz on that end, Scott Linden on this end. Hope you're enjoying this on location, spontaneous podcast interview that I had with Trevor while we were weathered out on one day of our Sharptail hunt. Quick word from TrulockChokes.com. Choke tubes precision made with tight tolerances on state-of-the-art CNC equipment. If you wonder why your choke tubes are rattling loose, it's probably because the threads aren't quite as fine as they could be. Trulock's quality control program is second to none. Made in the USA from U.S.-produced steel. Learn more at TrulockChokes.com. And I fueled Flick's most recent Sharptail adventure with Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. ProPlansport.com is where you learn more about all the ingredients and why protein is the number one component, and how amino acids in that protein will nourish muscles, including the crucial time after exercise. Yeah, that's when you rebuild those muscles, and he did a good job of it, didn't he? Well, you'll see the pictures eventually. Anyhow, on top of all of that, the reason I'm shooting so well, Scotch double, among other things, it's because I took some instruction from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. They know hunting and they know shooting, and Dave Fiedler is their in-store shotgun guru. On top of learning how to shoot, this guy's got a line on all the hard-to-find sub-gauges out there. If you're looking for a smaller gun for any reason, start your search with Dave. Dave knows how to shop for a gun and can help you find the right configuration for you. Of course, when you're ready to buy, he can ship anywhere. Make him your first counsel on all your shotgun needs. MidvalleyClays.com. That's MidvalleyClays.com. Leave your guide hat on for one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. And that is, we've been hunting together for, a day and a half, basically. And there's all sorts of things in the back of your truck or in your vest, and that sort of thing. But, and most of it is specific to managing a string of 8 dogs
Sure.
and running clients as well. But something in there is something that we can also take to heart when it comes to a piece of gear or something like that. Can you, put your mind in the back of your truck? Tell me what that thing is.
I mean, the back of the truck's got, extra collars, extra antennas, 4 collars, all that kind of stuff. I've got a medical kit for my dogs. I've also got one for people. Plenty of water. I'm probably checking boxes that people have already checked. But in my vest, I carry usually some sort of like Vitacal, or I've heard people use frosting or honey or something to get their dog glucose back up, or if you start experiencing something like that. I've always got some sort of pliers or cutters. You never know when you could encounter a snare or something like that. Or things happen with fences and so it's just, I think having something like that is a good tool. And then, there's some first aid in there for sure. Yeah. But, outside of that, I reserve my pack for water. Yeah. That's the most important thing most of the time that I can be carrying. Yeah,
I was admiring your new pack for the water capacity that is mounted on the hip.
Yeah,
the hips are carrying all the weight.
Yeah, I've got 4 bottle holsters, so 2 on each side, and then on the warmer days, I've got 4 more at least in my bird pouch, which gets a little interesting once you got 2 clients that start if we get into them. Usually I end up asking for a little client support on carrying birds, but it's if it's going to be even approaching 70 degrees and you got 2 dogs on the ground, I'm carrying 8 to 10 bottles for an hour and a half, 2-hour walk.
I always tell everybody I start worrying about heat at 50 degrees. Is there a bottom end? I mean, would you hunt a dog at 20 degrees?
I think it depends on the dog.
Yeah.
It depends on the terrain, and then what that 20 degrees really is.
Yeah.
So yes, I guess the answer to that is I would, but only if I felt good about it.
I do have one more because this one comes up. I get this question once a week. I'm going to a lodge. I'm going to an outfitter. How and how much do I tip a guide? And I know you can only speak for your own experience and that sort of thing, but give us a feel for, first off, number one, folks, if you don't know how that all works, the guides make a lot of money on tips because the pay sucks. And so bear that in mind. But other than that, I mean, what is an appropriate tip for a great guide day?
Well, that is a opinion-based question for sure.
Well, you can err on the side of good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess before I answer that, before you tip your guide, remember everything that they've done to prepare for that day or those few days, and most of the time that preparation starts years before that day. Getting a dog to the place that you feel comfortable and confident running that dog for a client experience. Like I said, sometimes you can get it done with a young dog. Most of the time, that's 4 years of preparation and feed and everything else that goes into it. So we do carry a lot of costs. But I'm not. This isn't it's just reality. There's a lot of cost built into every business, and so I think that you should be prepared to give at a minimum $150 a day.
Yeah.
And and again, that super opinion-based response, but I have clients that do tip significantly more than that per day. But at the same time, I also, I'll speak only for myself, I am going to earn that.
Yeah.
And it is a priority. I mean, I'm not going through the motions every day. If I would, the day that I do that, I will stop guiding. I'm there for the dogs first. I have no opinion, no hardship saying that. And I'm there for the client second. And I want everybody to have a great experience. And I hope at the end of each day, I've earned that tip.
Can't agree more. Yeah. And so I'll leave it at that. Tip your guide well. You'll enjoy every minute of it, and you'll particularly enjoy the dog work, and that's why we're all here. So,
absolutely.
Trevor Walz, thanks for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Happy to be here, Scott.
And that'll wrap it up for this special on-location edition of the Upland Nation podcast. Thanks again, Trevor, for not only showing me how to find sharp-tailed grouse, but also taking your 1.5 days of free time and spending them with me. Cheers and all that jazz. Appreciate that a lot. And of course, that's not the only thing I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for you and your listening and all of you who comment at the social platforms, and especially wherever you get your podcasts. That's the way we grow, is by you rating the Upland Nation podcast. So please do take a moment next time you're over there. And thank you to our sponsors, everyone from Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, LandTrust.com, Pointer Shotguns, and HiViz Shooting Systems. Yeah, it's been a rollicking few days in Montana. More to come as we get deeper into the season. Until then, you be safe out there, take a friend hunting, and be good to your dog. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation podcast.